Hello everyone, and welcome to my Bold and Beautiful Today channel. Brooke Logan is in dire need of rehabilitation. According to spoilers on The Bold and the Beautiful, everyone can now agree that Brooke Logan belongs in treatment and nowhere else. Spoilers for The Bold and the Beautiful, Brooke Logan needs help rehab. Because of her intense obsession with Ridge Forrester, the woman is actually ruining her life and her family. Brooke didn't seem to mind at all when her own daughter, Hope Logan, informed her that she loved Ridge more than she loved her. Because the mother would most likely sell her children to the highest bidder in order to fulfill her desire to be with Ridge. For this reason, many believe that Brooke should check himself into a recovery facility before it's too late. She must distance herself from Ridge and, by extension, from everything Forrester. Naturally, BNB supporters and detractors expressed their opinions on social media. Brooke cares more about Ridge than she does, some have even said in their comments. Then Katie appears, siding with Brooke. So heartbreaking for Hope. As Steffi and Taylor boast and talk about Logan's evil. I wished to sacrifice everything for love. She just loved and supported Carter, who is already dating Daphne. Spoilers for The Bold and the Beautiful, what will happen to Brooke Logan next? The worst part, according to a different admirer, is that Ridge has mistreated her and her kids more than anybody else, yet she still asks him to return and continue abusing them. Brooke is fine with being treated disrespectfully, so Hope should leave LA and not come back till he is dead. I'm tired of this narrative that Brooke doesn't support Hope, was another remark. Why should Brooke support someone who makes bad decisions, especially a child who keeps making bad decisions? At this point, Brooke is sick of telling her not to make these poor choices, but she continues to do so and turns to her when they go wrong. Emmy-winning director Heather Tom directed an all-female episode of The Bold and the Beautiful that shocked the soap opera community. Both fans and critics praised the episode as a masterwork of feminist narrative structure, powerful performances, and emotional storytelling. The episode, which aired during Women's History Month, removed the typical love entanglements and business intrigue to concentrate instead on the complicated and frequently painful dynamics between mothers and daughters. The performances were among the most unvarnished and poignant in the show's recent history. The benefits of taking a bold creative risk. The series made a bold creative risk that paid off well by focusing the entire episode on its female characters, Brooke, Catherine Kelly Lang, Hope, Annika Noel, Katie, Heather Tom, Steffi, Jacqueline McInnes Wood, and Taylor, Krista Allen. The absence of male characters or extraneous plot devices compelled the author to delve deeply into the generational and psychological scars that characterize these women's relationships. As a result, the episode had lengthy, continuous scenes of confrontation, confession, and catharsis, and it felt less like a daytime drama and more like a stage play. The content was further enhanced under Tom's direction, which emphasized the importance of each phrase with lengthy silences and close-ups. The emotional beats were more difficult to convey because there was no conventional soundtrack, so the actress's delivery and the tension in their body language were crucial. The episode was hailed by social media fans for its unflinching honesty, with many describing it as the most sophisticated storytelling B&B has done in years. #standout performances, an exhibition for the top ladies of the show. In her career best performance, Catherine Kelly Lang, Brooke, portrayed Brooke's despair over Hope's decline with a rawness that made it difficult to distinguish between genuine suffering and acting. Her admission to Hope that "I don't even recognize you anymore" was a magnificent example of maternal anguish. With her portrayal of a lady on the verge of emotional collapse, Annika Noel, Hope, astonished spectators. In the last moment, she went from angry wrath to heartbreaking cries that were worthy of an Emmy. As she addressed Taylor about their own broken relationship, Jacqueline McInnes Wood, Steffi, demonstrated once more why she is one of the most captivating performers of the daytime by striking a balance between Steffi's signature steeliness and uncommon sensitivity. When Katie called Taylor out for supporting Steffi's darkest impulses, she showed the suffering underneath her arrogant exterior, giving what could have been a one-note villain role unexpected depth. The episode's moral compass was provided by Heather Tom, Katie, whose calm yet stern demeanor pierced through the mayhem with kindness and insight. She spoke very nothing in response to Hope's breakdown. Hashtag resonant themes, motherhood, legacy, and the pain cycle. This episode's willingness to examine parenting as a complicated, frequently horrific institution rather than as a hallmark ideal was what really set it apart. Brooke was forced to consider whether she had perpetuated the cycle of conditional love as her struggles with hope matched those she had with Stephanie Forrester. The relationship between Steffi and Taylor, on the other hand, highlighted the perils of parental idolization and how a mother's unfailing support can occasionally stunt a daughter's development. Male viewpoints were purposefully and effectively left out. In the absence of Ridge, Liam, or Finn to arbitrate or control, the ladies were forced to confront their disagreements directly, unencumbered by the patriarchal structures that often govern their lives. As a result, daytime TV narrative felt new. Hashtag reception by fans and critics, give them all the Emmys. Following the episode's airing, social media exploded, with hashtags like #BoldAndBrilliant and #Emmy for Heather Tom becoming popular. The episode, according to critics, was a unique instance of a soap opera moving beyond the conventions of its genre to resemble prestige drama. Tom's direction was cited by many as a revelation, demonstrating that daytime television can be just as artistic as primetime. Hashtag implications for B&B's future. The show's creators will use this episode as a model if they're clever. Shock value and narrative twists are frequently used in soap operas, but this episode demonstrated that character is the most potent dramatizer. Whether it takes the shape of a long-term move toward deeper, more psychological themes or another all-women episode, fans are already demanding more female-centric storytelling. There's no denying that Heather Tom's all-female episode was a statement rather than just a noteworthy event. And the fans won't let the Emmys hear the end of it if they don't pay attention. Asterisk. Despite the betrayal, the mother chooses Ridge over her daughter. Brooke should have apologized. Despite Ridge's betrayal, Brooke Logan's decision to put her turbulent relationship with Ridge Forrester above her daughter Hope's emotional health has sparked criticism of her flawed maternal instincts and the show's recurring theme of romantic loyalty over familial responsibility. This storyline highlights Brooke's tragic pattern of sacrificing her children's trust on the altar of her own romantic idealism, a cycle that has defined her character for decades. By refusing to apologize or acknowledge the harm caused by siding with Ridge, Brooke not only alienates Hope but also reveals the toxic dynamics of a mother-daughter relationship poisoned by generational trauma and misaligned priorities. Hashtag the betrayal of Brooke, a history of preferring men to motherhood. The reason Brooke chose to support Ridge even after his acts, whether infidelity, corporate sabotage, or emotional neglect, directly hurt Hope stems from her enduring incapacity to separate romantic affirmation from self-worth. Her notorious past, which includes concealing Hope's paternity and giving Ridge priority over her kids when he was vacillating between Brooke and Taylor, exposes a woman who confuses love with possession. This most recent betrayal is not an exception, rather, it is a continuation of Brooke's destructive pattern, in which she constantly begs her kids to overlook her transgressions, such as her rivalry with Taylor and her romance with Deacon, but she finds it difficult to hold Ridge responsible, even when his acts destroy their family. Because it uses Brooke's status as a mother as a weapon, her refusal to apologize to Hope is more hurtful. When Brooke presents her allegiance to Ridge as a sacrifice for family stability, she deceives Hope into doubting her own complaints. This creates a generational cycle in which moms teach their daughters to accept emotional neglect as normal, mirroring Brooke's own upbringing under Stephanie Forrester's scrutiny. Hashtag the cost of codependency, the influence of Ridge. Brooke's weakness has always been Ridge's gravitational pull. Ridge's poor behavior, lies, indecision, manipulation, is rewarded with unconditional forgiveness, and their relationship is based on a cycle of drama and reconciliation. Brooke conveys a perilous message by supporting him after the betrayal. A man's affection is more valuable than a daughter's confidence. Because of this codependency, Brooke is unable to speak up for Hope because doing so would make her face Ridge's shortcomings and, consequently, her own bad judgment. The story's insistence on romanticizing Ridge and Brooke's epic love exacerbates Hope's suffering. By calling Hope's rage dramatic or misguided, Brooke is echoing Ridge's tendency to downplay women's feelings. See his treatment of Taylor and Caroline. The idea that women must suffer betrayal in order to retain a man is perpetuated by the show's failure to allow Brooke to grow beyond this dynamic, which is a regressive cliché that goes against what contemporary audiences demand. #A daughter's abandonment, Hope's heartbreak. The fact that Brooke, her only dependable supporter in a family full of con artists, has now joined the group of people who have let Hope down only serves to further sour her feelings. Because it takes advantage of the cherished mother-daughter bond, this betrayal goes deeper than Ridge's acts. Hope's request, "How can you choose him over me?" is not only directed at Ridge, it is also an appeal for Brooke to end the pattern of putting romantic relationships before of her responsibilities as a mother. The injury is exacerbated by the absence of apology. Brooke's pride and the show's writing rarely permit her to acknowledge her mistakes, which is what an apology would entail. Using meaningless clichés like keeping the family together, she instead defends her decision, oblivious to the fact that her silence further shatters it. The isolation that follows, which forces Hope to choose between ignoring her suffering and cutting off contact with Brooke, reflects Brooke's own struggles with Stephanie, demonstrating that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. #Narrative implications, a lost chance for development. Here, the authors got the opportunity to reinterpret Brooke's legacy. A sincere apology might have demonstrated her development and positioned her as a matriarch who grows from her errors. Brooke is reduced to a warning about the price of love obsession as a result of her deflection, which instead serves to further her immobility. Additionally, it erodes Hope's autonomy by making her play the part of the victim forever instead of empowering her to establish boundaries. Backlash from the audience, why supporters demand accountability. The show's inability to allow Brooke to suffer repercussions is what irritates viewers. Her decisions have long been justified as passionate rather than harmful, but supporting Ridge over Hope goes too far. Supporters contend that Brooke's refusal to apologize shows poor storytelling as well as poor parenting. The story keeps Brooke stuck in a regressive cycle by not allowing her to change, alienating viewers who once supported her fortitude. Determination, the show's stagnation is Brooke's tragedy. In addition to betraying Hope, Brooke's decision to stick with Ridge also betrays her own potential. She will continue to represent lost growth as a mother who clings to the rubble of her love life while her daughter drowns in the wake of it until the authors release her from the bonds of this toxic romance. An apology may ultimately halt the cycle, not merely patch things up with Hope. Fans may never notice the twist, though, because romantic dysfunction is the norm in the B&B industry. A critical analysis of Brooke's pathological Ridge fixation and how it destroyed her children. The drama of The Bold and the Beautiful has long revolved around Brooke Logan's unrelenting obsession with Ridge Forrester, but the show's most sad and recurrent themes have developed from its side effects, especially the emotional and psychological trauma done to her kids. Brooke has contributed to a cycle of generational trauma by putting her turbulent relationship with Ridge ahead of her maternal duties, leaving her kids, especially Hope and Bridget, to struggle with feelings of abandonment, insecurity, and damaged self-esteem. This obsession has methodically undermined Brooke's capacity to foster enduring, trustworthy relationships with her children, turning her into a warning about the destructive force of love. It stems from her confusion of romantic affirmation with self-identity. #1. The romantic validation at the price of maternal duty. Brooke's tendency to choose Ridge over her kids is not coincidental, rather, it is pathological. In order to maintain her romantic idealization of Ridge, Brooke has frequently ignored the needs of her children, from gaslighting Bridget during her adolescent pregnancy crisis to concealing Hope's paternity. Her notorious claim that Ridge is her destiny frequently takes precedence over her obligation to shield her kids from his emotional abuse or open treachery. For instance, Brooke downplayed Ridge's behavior when he left Hope during her custody dispute for Douglas, describing his absence as complicated rather than holding him responsible. Hope felt doubly deceived by this decision. Her children learn from this prioritizing that Brooke's romance story comes before their suffering, which breeds bitterness and emotional distance. #2. Repetition of Stephanie's errors, a case of generational trauma. Brooke's actions perpetuate a generational cycle of conditional love by reflecting the destructive dynamics she experienced under Stephanie Forrester's supervision. In order to manipulate Brooke, Stephanie used criticism from her mother as a weapon. Brooke then reinforces this by teaching her daughters that emotional neglect is commonplace. Brooke's own history of making bad judgments out of love desperation is a clear parallel to Hope's recent downward spiral, which is characterized by careless choices and a broken moral compass. The idea that mother love is dependent on adherence to patriarchal norms is reinforced in the program when Brooke brushes off Hope's complaints with the same contempt Stephanie once used against her, underscoring this recurrent trauma. #3. The identity of Hope is being eroded. Hope's battle to break out from Brooke's shadow while yearning for her approval has shaped her character development. This struggle is made worse by Brooke's obsession with Ridge, as she alternatively emotionally deserts Hope, e.g., supporting Ridge amid his betrayals, and infantilizes her, e.g., interfering in her marriage to Liam. Hope is forced to choose between clinging to Brooke's conditional support and pursuing autonomy as a result of this dichotomy. The conclusion of this dynamic is the recent ultimatum in which Brooke rejected Hope in favor of Ridge, refusing to express regret for his part in upsetting Hope's life and turning Hope into a mere pawn in her mother's never-ending love story. #4. The invisible scars of Bridget. Bridget's storyline highlights the long-term effects of Brooke's maternal neglect, while Hope's hardships are highlighted. Because Brooke has consistently failed to put Bridget first, she has tense relationships, self-doubt, and a constant need to prove herself. Bridget internalizes the idea that her worth is dependent on her capacity to fix her mother's upheaval, a burden that impedes her emotional development, whether she is marginalized during Brooke's affair with Deacon or ignored in favor of Ridge's problems. #5. Redemptive potential versus story stagnation. Opportunities for development are hampered by the author's intent on romanticizing Brooke and Ridge's epic love. Brooke's legacy might be redefined by a redemptive narrative in which she owns up to her mistakes, extends an honest apology, and regains the trust of others. Her misdirection, such as attributing family conflict to Taylor or Steffi, instead serves to perpetuate stagnation. In addition to harming Brooke's character, the show's inability to let her to grow outside of Ridge's sphere of influence also restricts Hope and Bridget's potential by keeping them in roles as ongoing victims of their mother's unresolved pain. #Final thoughts, a heritage of broken bonds. Beyond simple love instability, Brooke's obsessive obsession with Ridge is a narrative critique of how unbridled emotional dependence may destroy family ties. Brooke's legacy will continue to be one of wasted maternal potential unless the show addresses this cycle directly and permits her to prioritize her children over romantic passion. Brooke's incapacity to acknowledge that her greatest destiny was to raise the children she brought into the world, not the guy who constantly leaves her, is the tragedy, not her love for Ridge. A 1,500-word critical analysis of how Brooke's sick infatuation is ruining the character. A mainstay of The Bold and the Beautiful for many years, Brooke Logan, Catherine Kelly Lang, is praised for her tenacity, drive, and nuanced humanity. Shackled by a compulsive obsession with Ridge Forrester, Torsten K., Brooke has become a shell of the person she once was, a figure who managed to blend love-passion with professional drive and maternal devotion. Once presented as a romantic love story, her obsession has turned into a poisonous narrative cycle that diminishes her agency, jeopardizes her relationships, and makes her into a cartoon of desperate romanticism. In addition to betraying Brooke's legacy, the show's fixation on rehashing this relationship exposes a larger inability to move its female characters past archaic codependency clichés. The decline into caricature from complexity. Early life shaped Brooke as a complex individual, a self-made entrepreneur negotiating the competitive fashion industry, a loving, although imperfect, mother, and a woman not hesitant to question the Forrester patriarchy. Her rivalry with Stephanie Forrester was legendary and stemmed from more than simply romantic jealousy, it was also based on class conflict and maternal protectiveness. Even while it was a major theme, Brooke and Ridge's relationship was only one part of a larger picture, until the author started confusing her identity with his approval. There has been a significant character assassination with the change from Brooke Logan, CEO and matriarch, to Brooke Logan, Ridge's eternal supplicant. She used to battle for her place at the Forrester table with skill and determination, but now she follows Ridge's every move, her value determined by his passing interest. Recurring sequences of her begging Ridge to pick her over Taylor or justifying his emotional indifference have taken the place of storylines that formerly examined her tenacity, restoring her business after betrayal, standing up for her kids. Brooke loses her nuance as a result of this simplification, becoming a one-note character characterized more by love hunger than by human depth. Narrative stagnation due to toxic love. Despite dominating B&B for more than 30 years, the Brooke-Ridge-Taylor triangle's most recent versions reveal its creative bankruptcy. Ridge's constant vacillation between Brooke's passion and Taylor's stability no longer provokes drama but rather weariness. In reaction to this dynamic, Brooke has developed a pathological pattern. Self-abandonment, whether she minimizes Ridge's transgressions, such as his emotional affairs, or betrays her own principles, such as supporting him against hope, she bends herself to match Ridge's romanticized picture. Maternal neglect, her obsession with Ridge constantly takes precedence over her responsibilities to her kids. By gaslighting her daughter with phrases like, "He's trying his best," Brooke put easing Ridge's guilt ahead of treating Hope's suffering when Ridge sabotaged Hope's custody fight for Douglas. The same beats are repeated endlessly throughout the narrative. Taylor gloats, Brooke panics, Ridge retreats, and the cycle restarts. Brooke is stuck in a Groundhog Day of romantic sadness because of this stasis, which prevents her from growing. The author's reluctance to allow Brooke to escape this cycle, even for a short time, raises the possibility that they are afraid of moving past clichés. In contrast, Steffy Forrester maintains her agency through her work and parenting despite being involved in love drama. Brooke's stagnation is a creative failure as well as a weakness in his character. Collateral damage, broken legacy and family. The poisoning of Brooke's relationships, especially with her daughters, is a result of her infatuation with Ridge. Hope Logan, Annika Noel Brooke's incapacity to set an example of positive self-worth is partially to blame for Hope's recent disintegration, which has been characterized by rash plans and emotional outbursts. Brooke's decision to side with Ridge during Hope's failed business coup was reminiscent of decades of parental neglect, teaching Hope that men's approval is more important than one's own morals. Bridget Forrester, Ashley Jones Brooke's constant emphasis on Ridge is the root cause of Bridget's enduring fears. Bridget internalized the idea that she was less important than her mother's sexual obsessions, which was demonstrated by her mother's concealment of her paternity and her exclusion from Brooke's affair with Deacon. Brooke's own upbringing under Stephanie's conditional affection is reflected in these interactions, which prolong generational pain. The tragic aspect is that Brooke has turned into the mother she once opposed, one who bases her children's value on their adherence to patriarchal standards. Reactions from the audience and the feminist analysis. Fans have grown outspoken in their dissatisfaction, accusing the program of converting Brooke to a Ridge-obsessed robot. Social media movements like #LetBrookeBeBrooke and #FreeBrooke express a desire to see her restore her individuality. Critics contend that by converting a once-empowered character to a warning about romantic codependency, the story undercuts feminist advancement. The larger problem is that female characters in soap operas are frequently kept in unending romantic cycles, depriving them of the nuance that male characters enjoy. Despite his shortcomings, Ridge is given the opportunity to grow, to make amends with Eric and Guy Thomas. Meanwhile, Brooke is still caught in a pattern where her worth is determined by her capacity to keep a man. Finding redemption, regaining Brooke's self-control. In order to save Brooke's character, the authors need to break the toxic tie, allow Brooke to leave Ridge, not as a stopgap, but as a final decision. Her passion might be rekindled by a plot in which she succeeds on her own, reviving her profession or coaching Hope. Confront maternal failures. Brooke might be made more relatable and the cycle of generational suffering broken by a candid, introspective narrative in which she confesses her transgressions and begs Hope and Bridget for forgiveness. Accept new conflicts, put romance aside. Inquire about Brooke's legacy as a CEO, her conflicts with new foes, or her experiences as a grandmother adjusting to shifting family dynamics. Conclusion, a valuable character. Years of indolent writing have obscured Brooke Logan's enormous potential. Her sick infatuation with Ridge is a sign of a show that is clinging to antiquated plots, not just a weakness in her character. Brooke's legacy will continue to be one of wasted genius, a cautionary tale of what happens when love overrides purpose, until the bold and the beautiful dares to rescue her from romantic purgatory. It is up to the writers to allow Brooke Logan to be herself once more.